I was talking to Robbie before we went live, and I thought it'd be cool if any of you have any lead conversion questions. Um, Maybe one of you guys can just comment on this video and just say like maybe an objection, maybe um, because I think it'll relate to today's topic. It'll segue nicely, and you're going to get a little bit of live help from one of us. So you or your agents that have been calling leads, have any of you that are listening right now ever had any trouble with a specific scenario?
And if they don't have any, Barry, I think I agree. I think I'm excited because this one, Masterclass number 4, is all about challenging their thinking. And the whole point of challenging somebody's thinking is honestly pushing back or learning more about an objection. So I'm excited to talk about that. And if they don't have any, we can definitely, I think you and I have encountered enough that we can just create our own. Oh, you're muted now, buddy. You're muted. Muted.
Let me look. Okay. I don't see any. You can hear me now, right?
Yep, you're good.
Yeah, I don't see any comments. So we'll just go ahead and this format, by the way, is so interesting because it's just like, oh, okay, we're gonna go Facebook Live and do this, but that's okay. Yeah. All right, man. So let's get into challenging their thinking. Robbie, you've done a masterful job. Let me just say the first 3 sessions, like I've mentioned to a few people afterwards, I'm like, gosh, this is really, really good stuff. Appreciate you pouring into the community because I know that, you know, this is, if I was to hire you to do 6 sessions on this, you know, you're appropriately not necessarily free. you know, you got to make a living. And the fact that you're doing this is huge. So yeah, when you think about challenging your thinking, like where do you normally start?
As odd as it sounds, it's from the moment I start talking to a lead. Usually what it comes down to for me, challenging their thinking is the most polite way for me to put when somebody has an idea they just shared, and if I want to learn more about it or push back against it, I don't want to tell someone they're wrong, right? I think you see it a lot right now that people are trying to motivate people by saying interest rates are so low, or you should buy a house because they're good. You know, home prices are going to keep going up. And let's be real, nobody knows what's going to happen. Let's quit kidding ourselves. Nobody knows. Yes, those are facts. There is some fact that prices will probably keep going up in the long run for sure. And interest rates are historical lows. People also know these things, right? It's not like they don't know this stuff. You can't turn the news on without hearing about it in some way, shape, or form that interest rates are at all-time lows. Now, what it really comes down to is when it comes to human beings, like the psychology behind this is oftentimes people get stuck in their ways of an idea, and it's called anchoring in psychology. It's a psychological anchor. And a really good example of this is you could talk to a lead and they'll tell you that they're about a year out because 7 months ago they started saying to themselves, I want to wait about a year till we make a move. Well, now 7 months have passed, and because they have this anchor that they're a year out, when you ask them 7 months later, you know, when do you think you want to make a move, they'll say something because their mind is looking for the quickest, easiest answer. Their mind will draw from the most convenient one, the channel that's already there. So they'll say, well, about a year or so, even though it's 5 months or less, because they're not consciously going through this. Also subconscious processing that's happening. The person I learned it from was Dan and Chip Heath. If you haven't read Dan and Chip Heath's books, there's 4 of them. I don't remember which one it was, but one of their books, they're 2 nerdy brothers who write a ton of like fascinating intersection of business meets psychology and that sort of thing. So really the whole point of challenging someone's thinking is to bring up an opposing idea. Don't tell them that they're wrong for thinking what they're thinking. Bring up an opposing idea for them to think of separately. So Barry, if you said you were thinking about waiting a year, I would bring up a question and say, all right, Barry, so I know you want to wait about a year. So I need to honor you, right? Because if I don't honor what you just said, you're going to think I'm some manipulative a-hole, because I am doing that, and I'm aggressive. Let's be real. But I'm going to say, all right, Barry, so I know that you're thinking you want to wait a year. But let's say that ideal home came on the market in the next month or two. Is that something you'd consider viewing, or would you miss out on that opportunity? Because now they, in their one part of their mind, is viewing something through 1 year out. But now I just said, would you do something essentially now or in the next month? And it's this thing in psychology called shifting the spotlight. You're literally changing the focus of their mind away from one idea to a new one, because they can't simultaneously think of both. But we just got them to shift and look somewhere else. And sometimes they will give you no chance, no way I'm doing that. I'm going to wait until at least January 1st. Because usually what happens is they either like reinforce why they're waiting a year, or they say, you know what, I would probably consider that place. And then guess what I do, Barry, to go to lesson number 2 or 3, I don't remember at this point, was, oh, tell me more about that, Barry. Why is that? What are you looking for? So that's the whole point of it. Challenging their thinking is presenting an alternative that's within the realm of possibilities, that's real, that gets them to see things from a different angle. By the way, this is not like just doing a timeline thing. Ask it all the time. It's like their thinking is something that can be used in so many different facets. So that's really the foundation of this.
Yeah, and when you think about when you were sharing this, I was thinking about like being an authentic person, and going back to the original name of one of the first teams I started was the Friends in Real Estate team, which we still have. But it's in 2012, I wanted to have a group of agents that it was like you were talking to someone you were comfortable with at a barbecue, and they say something dumb or they say something ignorant with regards to real estate. And in the same way, you'd be like, wait, have you thought about, and then you just talk respectfully as a friend to the person. And that was my whole like vision of agents. And, it's interesting hearing you kind of define these things, because honestly, in many ways I hadn't really considered it from that angle. But I think there's a degree of like, because you're not scripting through that moment, right? Like you're kind of just you're just challenging their thinking.
There's no other way to put it. There's just no other way.
Right. Now, if you're not, see, for me, I know a lot about real estate, but like if you don't know a lot about real estate, maybe the agents that are a little bit newer, I think sometimes there's a temptation to not challenge anything because you don't know a lot. I don't know if you've seen that or dealt with agents that kind of have that challenge.
You know what I kind of think, Barry, and I might catch some flack for it, but I said this on a webinar the other day kind of impulsively, and it kind of just stuck with me. I think one of the biggest plagues in our industry is we think the way to convert leads is by being an expert in real estate. And don't get me wrong, like I think at some level you need to be competent, right? But as you all know, there's a lot of incompetent agents selling a lot of homes, unfortunately. So I don't think that's how you convert leads. I don't think it has anything to do with you or your competency. What I think you have to shift your expertise away from is not being an expert on real estate. In your conversations, you need to become an expert on them. And that shift needs to happen. And we've talked about how it's simple things like finding out what's already influencing them. It's getting an understanding of their thinking. Like one of my greatest things that I love is honestly I'm fascinated with why someone thinks something. And I'll literally say, well, Barry, why do you think that? Help me understand that. And some people say why questions can be dangerous. And they can be if you're asking it in a judgmental tone. But nobody's ever going to be offended if I say, well, Barry, why is that? Help me understand that a bit better. Nobody's ever going to be being a judgmental, I guess, for lack of a better term, a-hole. No, I'm just being a curious friend in that moment, trying to understand where you're coming from and what you're thinking. So for me, it all comes down to, you becoming an expert on them. The funny thing is, when I was in the game of being a lead converter, before I became this lead conversion coach, whatever the heck that means, when I was doing it, dude, I don't know anything about real estate, like literally nothing, outside the fact that 92 to 95% of agents are probably shouldn't have jobs. And a lot of times what they do, they treat people poorly. They're not good at service. And that's honestly what motivated me to have a lot of the confidence of my team, even on our worst days, is exponentially better than most people on their best days in this game, because we're responsive, we're good people. I mean, there's a whole list of things, right, of why our team was really great. And that's what motivated me. But I didn't know anything about real estate. Out of all the appointments I've ever set, all the people I teed up, granted, I was teeing things up and handing it over to my agents, who then would actually have a lot of these conversations as well. They would carry these conversations on when we would meet, to build more trust and rapport with those people. What I've come to realize is your real estate expertise is secondary to you being an expert on them. It is absolutely secondary. Because they don't care about how great you are, your statistics, how many homes you sell. None of that matters unless they feel like you care about them, like you're putting them first. And then at that point, you have to be competent. You got to be responsive. But those are like a standard. That doesn't mean that you're going to be up here in their eyes. So I hope that.
Yeah. No, it does. And it's funny. I was just talking to a new agent this morning on the huddle, and I always ask, I don't always ask, but oftentimes, did anybody do anything at work yesterday notable? Did you have a conversation, an appointment, a closing? And this new agent said, well, we did our pie giveaway yesterday, and where we were giving them away for Thanksgiving. And I called one of the leads that I spoke to and asked her to come. And I said, well, how did it go? Were you scared? And she said, yes. And but they were able to connect face to face, because that was the first time they'd met. And, the buyer shared a very emotional story of why they were looking for a home that I don't have time to get into.
Sure.
But there were tears involved. They walked away knowing, she's going to talk to the lender today to get pre-approved, and they're going to try to find a home. And I told the clients, partially because of these sessions that I've been doing with you, I said, look, not that you did it to get them, as a client, but by being a good human and caring about them, you got them. You got them.
Yes.
And so it's very interesting, man. I think I'm kind of bummed in a way that the industry as a whole is trying to quasi push and trick consumers, and your group, Hatch and my team, we're selling 800, 900 homes a year, and we have a very similar mantra, serving others, and putting the person ahead. So before we go into some of the nitty gritty, let me just pause for a moment. And those of you that are watching this conversion class, you need to understand that Robbie and I are coming from a place that you can have very good motives and very good intentions and still sell a lot of real estate over the phone. And I'm sure you would agree, Robbie.
100%. And then the other big thing I'll add is, unless you get your mindset in a similar place of ours, of until you adopt a service first mindset, none of these tactics, frameworks, or skills will work the way they should, because you won't be able to build trust, because people will sniff it out. You have to get this service-oriented mindset first. You have to buy into it. It's why we started with it, right? It's why we started with the mindset piece. It's so key. And it's interesting because I do about a webinar a month with random places, right, where I get to talk to top producers, top producing teams. And what consistently keeps happening is the biggest players that I keep meeting out there that are running really successful, profitable businesses that are helping a lot of people, they're putting service first, almost every single time. And the other big word is authentic, right? Your business is different than ours. There was a guy that I met on a webinar. I think it was Friday. I don't remember, man. Everything's a blur in my mind. I think it was Friday or Thursday of last week, and they're selling 300-400 homes, and it's just it's an authentic group of like these fun guys just living life and representing their county, and it's brilliant because it represents them. And I'm fortunate enough that I'm friends with a guy named Miles, and Miles is kind of Facebook famous, Instagram famous. Basically, he's the You Betcha guy. If you've ever seen, like, he does a lot of like Bush Light stuff, and he talks. And him and I, he's done some hatch coaching stuff with us because he's from this area, and he talks about how you got to be authentic to who you are. And I think authenticity and service really matters in this ball game, and I think we lose sight of that all too often.
Yeah, and what we're not saying though is be a doormat, don't influence them. In fact, we're saying the opposite. We're saying serve them and challenge their thinking. And I think most people think serving them means just be agreeable and be a waiter or a waitress. Oh, you want Saturday at 10? Okay, sure. Would you like fries with that? Like very transactional. But and I think sometimes people are like, what's the difference? Well, let me remind you, we're actually telling you to serve them by challenging their thinking. Mm-hmm. And for those of you that are listening and are timid, you need to hear this, because you've tricked yourself to thinking that being timid and being shy and thinking about yourself and not bothering people is somehow honorable. When in all actuality, the most honorable thing you could be doing is challenging their thinking so they can grow and become educated.
Dude, that is such a huge light bulb. Like, I hope people take that, because service is not about helping them make the quickest, fastest, easiest decision. It's about making the best decision. And the way you help your clients and you help these leads make the best decision for them is by challenging their thinking, by getting them to think about things from a different perspective. It's purposely asking the question of, you want this, but if you got this, would you be okay with that? Right? Another good example of challenging their thinking to lay into this, Barry, just so people have some tangible, like, oh, I can ask that question going forward, is I would ask, all right, so you have this picture of the ideal house and you only want to spend X amount of dollars. If the ideal home comes in above the amount of money you want to spend, do you want to go up and spend that extra $50,000, or would you be willing to sacrifice on your home? Which one matters more to you, price or getting the right home? So you're presenting alternatives, right? Especially when they're like, well, we don't want to go above 500,000. Okay, got you, Barry. I know you're pre-approved up to 600. If that ideal home came on the market at 575, do you even want to consider it, right? So asking challenging type questions like that presents alternatives. Now I get to see a little more influence behind, well, what is Barry thinking? The other funny thing about this is Barry's never, or almost all clients are never making a decision in a vacuum by themselves. There's always other players. Right? Barry, what's your wife's name?
Nicole.
Nicole, right? So I ask you all this. Nicole might have a drastically different answer than what Barry does, right? If Barry sits here and says that he wants to only stay at 500,000, and she's like, no, if the perfect place came up at 550, I absolutely want to go and see it, right? And that's where it becomes almost like a counseling session. But you need to ask these questions, because a couple, like two people, are never on the same page, ever. It's always, you're basically mediating it. But asking challenging type questions gets you closer to truth. And I think that's like the guiding thing I've learned with human communication is, if you go fast, you're not getting the truth, you're getting the convenient answers. If you go a little bit slower, you get closer to truth. Truth is where you help people make better decisions. Better decisions is where you build a book of business where people adore you and love you because you gave them that wow service that we're pushing you all towards in providing to your clients. So just another couple thoughts on that.
So good. So good. you know, and I think that if they could kind of digest and take on what we just shared right now, I think that there's a huge opportunity for all of us to kind of change the industry. And I know that's kind of silly, but you know, really take this on, because my team is made up of like not closers. They're not.
Yeah.
Like, they're just really good people that I've trained to care themselves. They care enough to have awkward conversations and passionately invest in them. And that's why, you know, they'll start brand new. They'll get only leads from me for 2 years, and then it pops, and all their past clients are referring them business because they all love them.
Right.
And it happens over and over and over again. So anyway, let's keep going, dude. Let's keep talking about challenging their thinking. What are some other things that we should consider around this subject?
Yeah. So another one. So let's talk FSBOs, right, for a moment. Going down the FSBO route, because obviously that's not a lead source that we pay for, but and frankly, FSBOs are it's just a really prime example of what you can do to challenge somebody's thinking that is of a totally different mindset. So let's talk about just truths when it comes to for sale by owners. 99.9% of the time, it's a lawyer, accountant, something along those I guess you could say that path, and they're always DCs. Every single time they're a DC personality. I've never once in my life seen a FSBO that wasn't a DC for some dang reason. Now, the thing that I found is when I want to convert a for sale by owner, when I reached out, the ultimate question I want to ask them after they tell me about what they're hoping to do is I want to find out, well, what is your backup plan? And I think that's another thing you need to do is you can challenge somebody's thinking, not by making a statement, but by asking a question. Like, well, you know, obviously, very ideally, you'd sell your home yourself at about $200,000. But let's say that doesn't work out. Barry, what's your backup plan? And what I'll say all the time, Barry, is I will intentionally ask questions to get them thinking of like, oh my gosh, there's a flaw. There's a hole here in my logic. And here's the interesting thing. Guess what almost always happens if you ask a FSBO what their backup plan is?
What's that?
I hadn't thought of that yet. I don't know. And if you can get a DC to say, I don't know, I haven't thought of that yet, you've just won over that person because they're an analytical thinker, because you're asking a question that's getting them to think more deeply about something than they were doing. Even if they decide not to go with you. Now, of course, your goal there is, well, we could have a conversation about creating that backup plan in case this doesn't work out the way you want it to. And every single time, it almost always works out. So I think what people need to realize is challenging their thinking is just asking those questions that maybe you've been afraid to ask. If somebody says they're already pre-approved, another way to challenge their thinking is, you know, are you open to maybe getting a second opinion regarding your pre-approval? Guess what 90% of people will say to that? Yeah, why not? Because here's the thing is, nobody has a relationship. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. 90% of people don't have a relationship with their lender. They don't. Right. They don't really care. They just got pre-approved for that person. Right. And they would definitely potentially go with someone else if the rates were a little more competitive. But if I've learned anything, I don't tell other people what to go and do. I ask questions that makes it apparent, hey, there might be a better way to do this if you'd be interested. So instead of me saying, Barry, could I get you connected with one of my lenders that would give you, you know, a second opinion? I'll say, well, Barry, would you find some value in maybe getting a second opinion regarding your pre-approval? And the difference is it's your idea, not my idea at that point, right? It's me asking a question. Now, the only way this works is if you see value in that, right? It's me taking a risk. Sometimes you might say, no, not at all. My lender's my brother. Oh, cool. Never mind, then. Screw that. Forget that idea. So, like, it's simple. And I think people are just afraid of hearing no, and I love it. Like, I don't care if people tell me no. So.
Right. No, that's it's really good because you're just very plainly offering a suggestion, and you're allowing the person to choose whether or not they want to accept it. I don't know if it's because I love teaching, or if maybe I don't know why I do it this way, but the way that I've always offered these suggestions is I'll declare what I believe to be a fact, and then I'm going to ask the question. So like in this case, I'll say around the pre-approval, I don't know if you know it, Robbie, but mortgage companies, they're kind of like shoe stores. You got, everybody sells Nikes, but they all sell different kinds. Okay. And there's different variations. And the person buying the home always wins by talking to more than one person. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of like behind the scenes where you can take advantage of some of this cool stuff that's out there. Have you considered getting a second opinion? And so it's like I say it, and then I just ask whether or not they want to do it, which if you don't do it right, I get it. It could be kind of pushy, but at the same time, like if I know a secret, if I know like that cool, insider information, I want them to hear about it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think you earn the right to educate because you're asking far more questions. And I think where a lot of people go wrong is because they see themselves as expert, they try to educate only. And if I try to do that, most people find that to be distasteful. They do not like it. Now, if you layer in education points, right, throughout a conversation, that's a big deal. One of my favorite education points is regarding how long it actually takes to buy or sell real estate. There's this misconception of I can buy a home today and beat it in a week or a month. And unless you have straight cash, homie, you ain't doing that. It's not gonna roll that way. That's a adage to my boy Randy Boss from back in the day. There's a story behind that and a funny gift that we can add to this. Anyways, so the thing I will say, and even if I want to influence someone, I'll ask the question of like, Barry, do you know how long it usually takes to go through the buying and selling process on average? And guess what they'll say? I don't know. Or they'll say, what, a month or so, a couple months? And I'll say, well, actually, Barry, what we traditionally see is if somebody wants to buy or sell a home, it's about a 3 to 4 month process from the moment they really actively start looking until they're closing and in their new home. So really what that means, Barry, is if you want to be in a home in March of next year, you really need to start the process right now. Does that make sense, Barry?
No, well, I know you're scripting, but yeah, it does make sense. It does.
Yes, I almost got it. Yeah. But and that's the other thing is I'll ask, does that make sense? Because what I've found, and this is actually for me, like servicing clients, and I have a lot of users that use our messaging plans and systems in Sierra. I have found so many times where I will, number one, like problem solving 101 is, number one, I always need to ask one more question. I don't know if maybe people hate me for this, but all my clients that ask me a question, I always turn into a question back to them every time. Oftentimes people will solve their own problems then, right? Because I want to teach a man or teach a woman to fish. So that's the first thing. The second thing I do after I turn their question into a question, because I'm just very comfortable, we talked about them in one of the prior lessons, is then I will give them my education piece. Then I always end with, does that make sense? So it's question, statement, question. Here's what's really funny. Sometimes people hear something I just said differently and they're confused by it. So when I say, does that make sense? They're like, well, actually, when you're saying 3 to 4 months, why is that? Right? So then I'm like, well, so here's typically what happens is usually a buyer takes about a month or two to find the right home, to write an offer on the home, get it accepted. And then the closing process takes about another 45 to 60 days to be safe, depending on each market, right? So now I'm walking through and I'm reinforcing what I just said to them because I just asked a question and then they asked another question. And that's the power of it. So this happens all the time in client servicing, whether it's servicing, like a real estate client. It's what I do. And really, honestly, again, what this really does, Barry, is it gets you closer to truth so much quicker, because when you don't do this, you make assumptions. And when you make assumptions that somebody understands something, then they don't. So that's just right. The question, answer a question, QAQ.
No, that's so good. It's so good. And I think, if we're just telling them and just teaching, like you're saying, and not asking a question, statement, question, not only are we have not earned the right to teach them yet. right? And you know, some might ask, well, when do you earn the right? Well, you know, this isn't like a quantifiable thing. This is just, do I have credibility in this conversation? Have I earned your trust in the 33 seconds that we've been talking? And you might think, those that are listening, that that's silly, but just so you guys know, that that does happen. Like, they are deciding if they want to hang up the phone or not. And you know, so just keep in mind that when you're listening, you're engaged. And if you're asking really good questions, just so you guys know, it's hard to ask good questions because, you know, I'm leading you to think in a different way. I'm making you look at something from a different perspective. It doesn't take a lot of, you know, good teachers. The best teachers know their subject well, and they've mastered it, and they're able to, you know, flip it upside down and turn it around and look at it differently. And so that's why when we leave a message or we call someone and they pick up the phone and we say, do you have any questions? We've put the burden of thinking on them instead of saying, you know what, I know that they're overwhelmed. I'm going to help them parse through what their next steps are. And you know, and so yeah, anyway, I don't want to go too psychological on everybody, but challenging their thinking also means you're thinking for them, and it's like another layer of service. And it even gets into where you're shopping with them, so you've met them, you got them as your client. And I would sometimes, when I'm with the client, I would make observations like, you know, we've seen 7 homes and I've never seen your face light up like it is right now. Tell me why. What's going on?
Money.
You know, and so yeah, money. This translates through from the entire process. And then you're like, you're needed, guys, because if your service is relegated to what Zillow can do, then you're not really providing anything of value. They can get that on their own. They don't need you for Zillow.
Dude, that's the biggest thing I hope people take from this masterclass is what you and I are describing now is the real estate service of the future. Because if your value proposition is reaching out to leads, offering to go show a home, opening a door, writing a contract, I have some very uncomfortable news to tell you. You will not have a job in 5 years. Your business will fold in 5 years. It will not be around in 5 years, maybe even sooner, maybe 10. And that's because that can be outsourced. What can't be outsourced or altered, in my opinion, or would be the very last thing to go, is a human being that is counseling other people through a decision that's highly emotional, logical, confusing. That's the agent of the future. It's the counselor. Like, we should get rid of the term agent and we will become counselors, where we're counseling people through the biggest, most emotional decision of their lives. That is an incredibly more difficult thing for Zillow or anybody else to go and replace. It's really tough for them to go and do. I think people will always need a validator to help process these ideas. Because that's really what all this is. Whether we're talking emotions or thoughts, it's just human beings have these ideas going around in their mind. You're having a conversation that's helping them sort through a lot of these ideas. And because they're having that conversation with you, because you're the one that's not just calling to say, hey, let's go show you 123 Main Street, because you're the person that's having the audacity and the confidence to go much deeper. They go deeper for you, right? They want to work with you. That can't be displaced like opening a door. Opening a door is already displaced. Again, in 2-3 years, I don't even know like how many homes will be how many will be self-guided showings. We're seeing it in Arizona. We're seeing it in Florida. We're seeing it in some markets where, and you know, I'm not going to sit here and bash them. This is capitalism, right? It's going to innovate. Frankly, I'd rather do that. I'd rather show you a house without an agent. 100% I would if I could. I'm not going to lie. But the point is that that trusted confidant or confidant, the person that can guide through that decision, that is incredibly difficult to replace. And this isn't just lead conversion. This is like managing your team. These conversations you have with your kids, your best friend. I had a conversation this morning, Barry, with a coaching client, a kid. I say kid, and he's my age, but a guy I love dearly, and he's going through some crazy hell, man. And I don't want to share a story, but I was able to just be there with him today, and I think that's what humans want, is they just want to know someone's in their corner. And the simple, like, some people say, like, you need to show value. I hear this all the time, dude. Like, show value, send value, show value. And truly, what I believe is one of the deepest value propositions you can give is not send listings, but make this conversation all about them. Like, that is, to me, I think it's the highest form of value that is so easy. You don't need to send out all these CMAs and go drop off beer at their house or anything like that. Have a conversation with them that is 100% about them, because I guarantee you this. When was the last time somebody did that for you? You'll probably say, I don't know, years ago? Never? Because I guarantee you there's that one person. Usually it's like a counselor, a really good friend, a church pastor, a youth pastor, that leaned in to your story to hear who you were and what you were hoping to do, and you love that person to death for it. I almost guarantee it. And I think that's the thing that we're talking about, is replacing this idea of just opening doors with providing a level of service that can't be displaced, because I don't know if there's any other word besides higher. Like, it's a higher form of service. Like, I don't know another way to put it.
Yeah. So no, I think, dude, I think you're spot on. And I think you've really crystallized in my mind, listening to you talk about it, that this is not a Ylopo thing. This is not a lead conversion thing. This is are you going to sell a lot of houses in a few years type of thing? Because I know lots of life insurance salespeople, but dude, there was a Facebook ad from a reputable company, so I trusted the brand, that said you can apply for life insurance via our mobile website in 10 minutes. Yeah. I did it. I got $500,000.
Ladder.com?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, same here. I have 100% have Ladder.
Yeah, I was just like, and then they were like, you want to add your wife to it for, you can get her another 200, and she's she robbed the grave. She's way younger than me. And you can add her. She doesn't have to have any health checks. I was like, and I just told my wife, I was like, I don't want to invite somebody to my house, have them try to sell me more than I need and deal with all that. And so I'm of that same mind. And so let's just, for a second, those of you that are watching this class, I want you to back out for a second. And I want you to realize once again what we're doing. Normally, a challenge your thinking class is overcoming objection class. And it's teaching you linguistics. It's teaching you the right way to phrase things, how to close. You don't give them an option. You say, do you want to do it right now or later? All these things. And I'm not saying any of those are bad in and of themselves, but what I'm saying, this conversation is calling you to being an authentic help to those around you. And so when you're doing this, even if you're a shy person, you can overcome that. Because look, as silly as it sounds, you just need courage. You need courage to challenge their thinking. And people think, and I don't remember if I've said this, I never remember what I say or don't say, but I'll say it again if I did say it. People think that if you're courageous, you're not afraid.
Yeah.
When in all actuality, the only time you need courage is when you're doing something while you're afraid. Amen. And so while you guys are overcoming challenging the person's thinking, I just want you to have enough courage where you say who you are, you hear them backing up off the phone. You can feel it.
Yeah.
They don't know what they want. They don't think that you're a relevant person to speak with right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to challenge their thinking in step one.
Yeah.
I'm a relevant person to talk to.
Oh.
Now, you can't say it that way, obviously, because they don't know who you are. That'd be kind of weird. But by handling the conversation in the right way, you are going to find yourself creating that whole value topic. As I said, I remember saying this last week, people pay therapists hundreds of dollars an hour to ask them questions for self-discovery. You know, like that's what therapy is.
Yeah.
What's that?
They find value in it, right? They don't send them a list of resources afterwards. They find value in that conversation.
First time my wife and I went to a marriage counselor, I've been married for 16 years, and my wife was 18 when I married her.
Sure.
And I was 23.
Sure.
And you think about 18-year-old, 22, 27, 30, 33, there's a lot of changes there, right? And so part of marriage is adapting and growing together. And so we were working on some different topics. And I remember leaving therapy and I looked at my wife and I said, this is amazing. I want to go again. Can we go again, please? Because like, I'm not in touch with how I feel very often. I'm not very self-aware. And I am with somebody that's like making me aware of what's going on by asking me questions and forcing me to think. And so we take that mindset into these sales calls. And when the person says, I'm just browsing, we won't fall like a house of cards. No. We'll say, okay, great. That's exciting that you're browsing. So what are you hoping to change about where you live right now?
Yeah.
Just keep it going.
It's really that simple, man. Like that's the simplest one is like when someone says they're just looking, or I'm just kind of looking for fun, or I was just kind of curious. So many people give up there. And I always say, don't give up until you get a firm no 3 times. I'm not saying tell them that they're wrong. Obviously you got to do it tactfully. Right. If you just tell people they're wrong, you will piss people off. But
nobody wants to be told they're wrong.
I will honor it. And okay, Barry, you're just kind of looking for fun. What had you looking for fun? Honestly, it's like the best question in the world. And what they'll do, it will shock the heck out of you. They're like, wow, I'm just kind of getting a feel for things or something. They'll give you like a little crack. I'm like, oh, great, getting a feel for what? Well, we're thinking about buying a home in about a year. Oh, great, why is that? Like it's truly that simple with humans. Like they're processing with you. It's again, the story changes. And like we need to just recognize this. People are afraid of you. Like I know we've talked about it before, but these people are afraid of you, not because of you, not because you're bad. Your heart can be in the right place, your energy can be in the right place. And these people could still think ill of you. And we can blame that on the sales industry. We can blame it on other people, past experiences, their own upbringing. You don't know who this person is, what they're going through. What I will tell you is, if you go ask 100 people, what do you think of salespeople? How many of them do you think there are going to say, oh, they're great, outstanding citizens who are incredible, genuine, open-minded? No, they're going to say, salesy, slick, disgusting, manipulative, right? This has been proven. Dan Pink wrote a whole book about it, that those are the most common words that are used. They don't call us hardworking like they should. They don't call us like gritty, persistent, or persevering. They say we're pushy and manipulative. And that's the hill you're climbing. Like that's who they think you are, no matter who you are when you call. What you're signaling to them is, because I always tell all my clients, don't tell other people who you are, show it, right? One of the worst things you can do is tell someone who you are, because inherently we all are skeptical about anyone that says they're going to do something. We'd rather just see you do it. And don't say you're not going to be salesy. Just don't be salesy. Like it's really that simple in my mind. What's the opposite of being salesy? It's being curious. Like it's. But all the time I hear people like, oh, we're going to over communicate. Don't tell them that. Just communicate with them. Just do it. Nike has it right. Just do it. Because what happens is when you say you're going to do something, Now they actually start thinking, oh, well, that's what the last person told me. Because they almost did. I almost guarantee it. So anyways, just some
Right. So the person that's telling you guys to approach sales this way, Robbie T, is one of the leaders in sales training in the ISA space. He's innovated in so many different ways. He's written an entire AI messaging plan that adapts to Raya. It's the Hatch messaging, right? And this is the approach that you Hatch ISA. This is the approach you used, right?
Yeah, it's the same stuff. It's just I geeked out and did it deep into it, and it's just little things. It's like when so like a good example is when a lead responds to regular Raya, I'm just looking. Regular Raya responds with, all right, no problem. I think the literal verbiage is, all right, no problem. Let us know how we can help in the future. And when I saw that, I'm like, how many times would I have missed really great opportunities because I wasn't willing to challenge their thinking? So I just literally trained the AI in what I call a soft no. And I worked with the guys that built the AI. I worked with them to understand this. So there's a difference between a hard no and a soft no. And then when there's like medium no's that are kind of confusing. But soft no's are just curious, just for fun, just looking, which is probably the most common answer, or one of them. And it instead says, okay, you're just kind of looking for fun, but let's say the ideal property came on the market sometime soon. Is that something you consider viewing, or would you miss out on that opportunity? The funny thing, Barry, is there was one person that signed up for the Hatch ISA, and the AI went off the rails. This is a funny sidebar story. And it went off the rails, man. It was scary. She sent it to me, and it was only one person. I was scared because I thought it was systemic. It was only the one person. What happened was the AI didn't include the transitional phrase. The transitional phrase always, and this is a big deal for you all to hear, you always need to acknowledge what they just said. So, for example, Barry said, I'm just looking. I can't say, if the ideal home came on the market, is that something you consider viewing? Because Barry's like, what the hell's wrong with this guy, right? He's being too direct, too forceful. The AI momentarily for this one person's account, for some reason, they figured it out later, had a bug where it literally didn't include the simple verbiage, all right, so you're just kind of curious, but let's say, right? So it's that phrasing that connects, okay, you just said you're just kind of looking, so all right, got it, so you're just kind of curious, but let's say the ideal home came on the market. So it's little, as odd as it sounds, it's little subtle things like that where you're honoring, like your transitional phrasing should honor what somebody just said. Not agree with it, honor it. Honor it means you recognize it. Recognize what they just said in some way, shape, or form. Then you have the permission to ask that next question. The funny thing is when that honoring phrase was out of it, guess how those people responded? They were pissed. They were like, this is AI. This is a robot. Like they started calling it out. I was like, no, the AI went off the rails. It was hilarious. So I'm not great for that person. I felt terrible, but nothing we can do.
Well, hey, I mean, I always tell people robots are never going to be as good as us.
Never.
But a tremendous leverage play is really what it is. And, not that if I would have asked Robbie if he wanted me to talk about this during the conversion class, I know he would have said no, but, just to highlight it, Robbie took this topic and put feet to it in the Hatch ISA product.
Yeah.
And the amount of conversations that turn into appointments went up like it doubled basically. Yeah. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was like crazy high. Yeah. So, from my perspective, this works. Okay. Like that's the big idea. Now, some of you don't like serving people. Some of you have bigger egos than others. Okay. And so, one of the things that I would say is that with having that mindset of serving, maybe you aren't the most humble person in the world and you're listening to us talk about this and you're like, well, I'm the professional. They need to listen to me. Well, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? Like, because, it's kind of like when you get in an argument with your spouse, if you're one, you're on the same team. So if you win, you both lose. You know what I mean? Like, so you don't want to fight with the person. And so with a client, you might win the argument, but you lost them, so you lost. And so this is like, I used to tell people, we had a special military program, and I would tell the military folks, and man, they ate this up. And I meant it though. I said, look, I want you to understand something. I said, my numbers speak for themselves, yada, yada, yada. I've been doing this, yada, yada, years. All that being said, I look at you as my commanding officer, and you are a grown up. This is your house. And I'm not going to try to tell you what to do. However, just like you would want somebody under you when you're their commanding officer to tell you what they really think, I promise you that's what I'll do. Yeah. And then I'm going to give you the space to make an educated decision. And man, every single time they were like, okay, where do I sign? Yep. Because what else can you ask for at that point, because I'm not putting the ego in the way. So hopefully I didn't embarrass you too much, Robbie, talking about it, but I just figured I'd bring it up because
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll add one more piece that I've learned is, if I'm about to drop some truth that they don't maybe want to hear, because there are times where you're talking to leads that a really good example is people that are seeking out what I call like the unicorns in the market. So they want the horse property for $250,000 with 5 beds and 3 garage stalls, and it's clearly going to cost maybe in your market $350,000. So it's going to be far outside their stated price point. One of the questions I've learned to ask that people are very receptive to is, Barry, can I be honest with you right now? Right? Because it's what happens is what I'm about to tell them now is no longer my idea. It's Barry's idea, because he's given me explicit permission, because they always say yes to that. And then the truth comes out, and it's not me just being this, pushy person. I'm now telling them the inconvenient truth. Or, Barry, on a scale of 1 to 10, how honest do you want me to be with you? Right? And if you say one of those two things, almost always they'll say, well, I want you to be very honest with me, or 10 or a 9, or don't be too hard on me, so maybe an 8, or it kind of lightens the mood a little bit. Then what I'll do is I'll say, okay, Barry, you've told me all about this house you want to purchase, and I got to be honest with you, man. This house you're going to purchase is not going to cost $300,000. The only ones I've ever seen come up are going to cost $450,000. So I got some questions for you. If that ideal home came up like you just described at $450,000, are you, 1, able to even potentially purchase that home, and 2, are you willing to purchase that home even if you're able? And that now gets clarity on, is this person actually going to look for this home, or they want to stay in that price range, or whatever it may be. So I'm going to ask questions like that to get clarity around their situation, because oftentimes one of the things that you all need to be doing is people have conflicting ideas in their minds, right? They want to get the best home possible at the lowest price. Well, that's not going to happen, right? There's always push come to shove in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's they need to sacrifice on the home. Maybe they need to sacrifice on the location, or sacrifice on the price. And I'm just going to ask those questions of which one matters most to you. Like, I've never had to, get out there and sell a home, but no offense, I think I could get out there and crush it, because all I would do is just ask the questions all day long, and I would just help them make I would ask these questions on the front end. That way, when that ideal property comes up that's $75,000 more than what they said they wanted, I know I need to get them in that house like that, because they told me of course we'd consider it, and we're able to purchase it. Where a lot of people don't even ask those questions, and they just go show 85 different homes, even though they maybe said, no, we don't want to spend that money. So yeah,
you would be an incredible, I don't think you want to be an agent. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with being an agent, but you'd be very, very good at it, because the hard part is talking to them when they don't know us yet. That's the hard part.
So anyways, that was the last challenging little thinking I wanted to add into is the truth teller statement. That right there of, can I be a truth teller? With expireds, this is a really big thing. Expires are canceled where they're $100,000 overpriced, and their other prior agent won the listing by saying, yeah, we'll list it at $600,000, even if it's a $500,000 home. And if I say, Barry, can I be honest with you, man? from what I can tell, that this home traditionally in the market is going to sell right around $500,000. Do you want to would you be willing to even sell it down at that mark, down around 500,000? And maybe they're going to tell me an answer, and they're going to say no, we got to sell at 600. Well,
right.
I'm not in the business of just getting a listing to get a listing. I don't know about you all. We're in the business of helping people sell their homes, not just list it. So for us, we're not going to go list it. Anyways, that's a digression.
No, yeah, absolutely. I like. Do you mind if I'm candid? Do I have permission to be candid with you as well? And I have found that for many, it's a breath of fresh air.
Yes,
it really is. When you can be candid without your ego being involved, AKA you don't need to be right.
Yes.
It's not about being right. If it's about being right, you lost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just as a salesperson. But if it's about, just telling the truth from your perspective in a respectful, non-arrogant way, it's a breath of fresh air. People are going to appreciate it. They really are. And I love telling industry secrets. So like in that example you gave, I mentioned something about the financing, but then with the overpriced listings, I say, look, I don't know if you know this or not, but there are agents that are so focused on getting a house for sale. And I'm not going to say why, because the circumstances are different, that they'll just list it for whatever you say so that they can get the listing. And while I understand what they're doing, I'm not making this about me getting a listing. I'm making it about you selling your house.
Correct.
And they're like, wow, yeah, that's interesting, and so Robbie, dude, I always come away from this feeling like I just got an amazing coaching session, to be honest with you. So I just appreciate you letting me tag along, to be honest with you.
That's fun, dude. And you bring a lot of good thoughts. You had a couple of light bulb moments that were really big today, and I appreciate it, dude. The only thing I'm disappointed is you didn't have sushi or edamame today. So
I know. That's my bad. I think we normally did this on Wednesdays. Is that what it is?
Yeah. This one somehow got moved to a Tuesday at noon Central. I asked Kiwi about that. I don't know how it happened, but
that's actually what happened.
Kiwi's like, y'all just talking crap about me over there.
Not.
Oh, you're muted.
Mate. You're muted, mate.
Crikey, there we go.
Crikey.
This Thanksgiving thing got in the middle of the week. It's kind of screwed things up. So
that makes sense. Yeah, good point. I still thought it was Wednesday.
Yeah. All right, we're all good.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Kiwi. Thanks, Barry. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah.
Thanks, boy.